Okay, well, this is a great place to start. How did you, well, then, why cataclysms? Like, how did you end up with this? Or were you researching something else before that led you here?
Yes, I was very much interested in ancient civilizations, ancient structures. So I went all over the world looking at different kind of buildings and cultures. And I was so much fascinated by by these structures that were, I was just dazzled. How is it possible that they built these large things, large stones, 20 meters long, 4 meters high, 3 meters thick, and they weighed over 1,000 tons. How did they lift these sorts of buildings, stones? And here in the Netherlands, we have in Drenthe, this is in the northern part of the Netherlands, we have dolmens. We call them hunebedden. It's a typical Dutch name, hunebedden. And in the Caucasus, they have dolmens, thousands of dolmens. And in Germany, they have dolmens, hunebedden as well. So I went all researching hunebedden. I went researching just out of interest, a fascination as an engineer. How do they lift these stones without proper tools? Because we use a crane, and so engineers calculate how heavy is this stone, and how do we have to put the crane, and what kind of materials and tools do we use, and then they lift. They use a very big crane, much bigger than the stone itself, and then they can lift it and move it. But the ancient people didn't have this, so I was fascinated by this. How did they do this? How did they transport and lift all these things? So it was just a fascination. This fascination was already there before I started researching this. And and one day I stumbled upon, I guess this was 12 years ago, I stumbled upon a bit strange magazine. I don't even remember the name. And it was about Charles Hapgood. Charles Hapgood was mentioned as an article in this
Hmm.
magazine. It was at a dentist or at a doctor's, you know, a stack of magazines.
Yeah.
And I just think, oh, this is about cars, not interesting. This is about homemaking, not interesting. That looks nice. That's just about this size, not very big. And scrolling through this magazine, and then I stumbled upon an article about pole shifts, and was a typical. I was a typical conservative, an engineer with a career and a family and a home and all kind of business friends. And then I had so I was a conservative. I even voted for conservative parties at that time in the Netherlands. And but it was something already changing in me. You see this Buddha here.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
never liked Buddha and Christ consciousness and all this sort of stuff, but that changed over time because in my journey to understanding the ancient world, I was already interested in the ancient world, of course, civilizations and structures and stones and so on, like I already told. And but this Charles Hapgood, this fascinated me. I thought, this is weird. This is weird stuff because he said Charles Hapgood talked about Antarctica accumulating ice, and then this ice cap caused a centrifugal force on the crust, and the crust starts to tumble. I thought that's weird. So let's make some calculations. And of course, it is my work to calculate. And so I assumed this and assumed thickness of the ice. And then okay, the size of Antarctica, we know this. So it's about average 3 kilometers thick. And then it's a bit off center of the rotation axis of the Earth. Okay, this caused some force, but of course this force has to overcome the stickiness of the magma. So this crust is floating on a sort of syrupy magma layer,
Hmm.
and this, of course, is very tough to move. It's like walking through mud. So, calculations delivered not a really successful result because the centrifuge.
Centrifugal.
Yes, I'm used to talk Dutch, of course.
Hmm.
Centrifugal force trying to overcome the stickiness of the magma layer, the crust
Hmm.
sticking on the magma layer.
Hmm.
It's no result. This will never going to happen because there's an order of magnitude of about, I believe, 200 or 300. So factor 200, 300, not enough to overcome this force of the crust shifting over the magma layer. This will never
So,
happen.
so the ice's force, centrifugal force, it's not strong enough to move, to sort of slide it because it's too
Yeah.
sticky. So
Yes.
it's more sticky than this force.
Yes, absolutely. So this will never going to happen. And but this Charles Hepwood fascinated me because he was a typical weirdo thinker. Some guy that throws in a stick in the chicken den and then starts to talk rubbish, and it catched on me. So I think, wow, because there is something else that was troubling me, and that
Mm.
was the ice sheet on Greenland. Ice sheet on Greenland. Why is there an ice sheet on Greenland? If you ask average people, they say, "Oh, it's logical because Greenland is far up north, and that's why it has an ice sheet."
But
But
why was it? Why for you was it strange?
because it always, not always, but of course, I'm an engineer and not a climate scientist, but I'm in the energy business, so I work on the transformation of a gas-driven, oil-driven economy to more environmental friendly uh, economy. So I'm busy with climate change and CO2, and of course Greenland melting ice sheet and Antarctica melting ice sheet and so on. So Greenland already had my attention because climate scientists are warning Greenland ice sheet is melting at an enormous pace, and we in the Netherlands are below sea level. So we have dikes and all kinds of systems, and it's complicated to keep our feet dry. So when Greenland starts to melt, here in the Netherlands, we think, "Oh, that's not a good sign." So let's think about this. So Rijkswaterstaat in the Netherlands is already for decades busy working on a plan they call the Delta Plan. It's now already finished, almost finished, but they have a Delta Plan, next Delta Plan for when the Greenland ice sheet is melting. So Greenland had my attention already for a long time. And but Charles Hepgood was talking about Greenland, and he said the Greenland was on the North Pole somehow. It moved over the North Pole. And I thought, strange idea, but it makes some sense because the Greenland ice sheet is not a logical thing to be.
Mm. In that position that it is now.
Yes, because there is a warm Gulf Stream running along the coast of Greenland.
Mm.
And so the equator is pumping heat to the northern part of the Earth, of the hemisphere. And why is it? Is it doing this? Because there is a shift in balance. There has been a shift in balance, and that is why there is an energy flow going to Greenland. So Greenland was initially on the North Pole, I think. So just make a jump without long stories. I thought, okay, if Hapgood was right about this, it would mean that there have been happening very strange things in the past. Because if Greenland was on the North Pole, it explains everything. Everything we see about why there is an ice sheet, why it is melting, and why the ancient ice sheets in the northern hemisphere, so America and Russia and Scandinavia, was centrically formed around Greenland. So if you look, because we always look at a flat map, but if you project this ancient ice sheet on a globe and you look on top, you see it is forming concentrically around Greenland. And I thought, wow, that explains a lot. Because usually you look, when you look at formation of ice, it always grows concentrically around the axis, rotation axis. This also happens on the southern hemisphere, on Antarctica. So if you start this journey into this entry, you think, okay, so if Charles Hapgood was right, and it seems so, but not on the way he explains, it must have been another mechanism. So I then thought, I tried different pathways to explain this, because I was already busy working and doing other things. I just stopped doing this and just fully concentrated me on this work, this research, because it captured me. So I did this research work for about 7 years, non-stop, 100%, 24/7, working solely on this topic. And it was not just something I did besides of a job. It was just 100% concentration on this. With my experience and with my education, I regarded myself as a good researcher. And of course, the mainstream scientists do not agree with me, because I just step over a lot of things, like geology. I say geology is a science in some sort of way, like archaeology, but they cannot verify what they claim. Archaeology is the same. They say this pottery is 2,000 years old, but this pottery cannot tell us no, I'm not 2,000 years, I'm 3,000 years old. Who can verify this? And of course, they have all sorts of difficult methods and scientific theories and blah, blah, blah. But verification is always a problem in these fields of science. Because when you're an engineer, you have a theory, you build stuff, and if it doesn't work, your theory sucks. So that is why I regard myself as a good researcher, because I have a theory, I develop it, and I test it. And test it over again. And then, of course, the mainstream side. But how can you test your theory about the pole shift? Because I have a mathematical backup. And my mathematical backup gives me possibilities to test on ancient structures. So I have a theory, I developed this theory, and I started to test this with the topics I put in this theory. So I go back to ancient structures and test them with my theory. For example, I did this with Stonehenge. Stonehenge is a very fascinating ancient structure, of course. It's like Giza and Teotihuacan in the field of interest of most people, and especially Stonehenge, because somehow it captures all kind of imagination about ancient world. And archaeologists say it is about 7,000 or 8,000 years old. I say no, because it points to pole 4, and now I make a really big jump, because I have to explain what pole 4 is. I know. But I can test my theory on Stonehenge, how it worked and why it worked this way. And I do it with another structure, So I test it on the pole it is pointing to, and then test it on solstice angles. And
Mhm.
this is difficult terrain because solstices are pretty mathematical stuff to explain. But you can test your theory, and every time it works. So I say, my verification worked. And as a scientist, I can say, pretty much about 99.4%, I'm right in this. And of course, I shuffle away everything what archaeology has done, almost everything that geology has done. But no matter how angry or disappointed or insulted maybe scientists can be, I think I'm right in this. And this uh, explains also ancient stories about floods, about giants, about dinosaurs, about how continents fit onto each other, like in Pangea. So my theory expands in all kind of directions. And then, of course, I become a sort of pseudoscientist because I just embezzling bullshit, according to scientists. But okay, I think I can back it up. So let's go back to the start.
Yeah.
So people will now know in about, how long? 20 minutes? What kind of fool this Mari Buildreps is.
No, but it's interesting that if you can verify and if you're 99% sure and that math works, I mean, it to me it sounds like more credible than any other science when we don't even know what methods they're using or why certain things they don't even give us like the percentage, right? I think it's like you have to believe 100% or nothing. Or if you don't believe 100%, then you
Yeah,
are pseudoscientist.
yeah. And now currently, if you look at how science and the monopoly of power,
Yeah.
the monopoly of money, how it is organized, you understand that, you know, newspapers, news outlets, they're almost in the hands, 100% in the hands of big companies. And this big
Mm.
company is steered by just one guy. And this guy says to his managers, just arrange it. I don't want to see this, and this topics in my papers. And if you do, you will be fired.
Yeah.
So this paradigm is dictated from a few persons
Hmm.
that have interest in a certain worldview. And this money flow also goes to archaeology, goes to geology. So all these terrains are dictated by a certain paradigm. So no real research is done. It looks like research, but it's micro terrains, really small parts researched with a
Hmm.
material idea in mind. So about this Buddha behind me, I started also to see, you know, the people call it the night of the soul or whatever. I had a difficult period when I was about now 60 years old. When I was 48, 45, I began to slowly descend into these troubles men of my age at that time typically coming. So they want a young wife, they want another life, they want this and this. And so I just gradually went down this slope into the deep abyss, what they call eventually the night of the soul. Why I'm living, what I'm doing here, what is life meant to be. So these questions also came up at the same time, and I call this happiness or call this depression or psychosis or whatever. But I went into this path and I came out of this as a whole other person because my children don't recognize me anymore as the man I was used to be. I'm a totally different guy.
Wow.
They say, Daddy, you're completely other men, and
Interesting.
they they uh, they like it somehow, but they also don't like it because I like to live my own life. I like to do my own things. I like to say what I want, and I like to think how I want. When I'm free to talk, I go everywhere. So I'm just going from there to there, and then people think, "Wow, what a bullshit he's talking." But you have to really
Mhm,
look at the big picture, and just I'm looking at the big picture, and I'm pointing all the time to different areas and terrains. And
mhm,
you, as a listener, have to connect all these dots,
mhm,
not only
mhm,
by yourself, because I'm going to do this as well, but a little bit. You have to think big, because let's go back to Charles Hapgood. Charles Hapgood claimed um, that the crust had shifted, and this would explain ice sheets on North America. This explained ice sheet partially on Russia, and so on. And that makes a bit sense, because if you look at so I go back to the beginning, Charles Hapgood, and then forward, because if you look at how the situation now is, there's a North Pole in the sea, in the ocean. And then you
mhm,
have Greenland and Canada and Russia and so on around that sea. I believe they call it the Northern Ice Sea, or something like this. And then you have the Southern Pole that is on the center of Antarctica, and there is an ancient ice sheet. We know it's ancient because drill holes and blue ice have shown this ice sheet is at least 800,000 or 1.2 million years old. And because this ice sheet is driven outside, because it forms every time on top every year, it snows, and then gets thicker and thicker, and this pressure pushes the low layers to the outside. So this ice creeps to the outside of the continent, and they can find blue ice on the edges, and blue ice is about 2.4, 2.5 million years old. So they know this ice sheet is old. This continent is there, sorry, already for a long time. But it is not. This is not the case for Greenland. Greenland ice sheet is not older than 100,000 years, provable older than 100,000 years. So it's difficult to say for scientists how old is this ice sheet on Greenland. And then, so you have to look at all these signs and all these signals that there is something strange going on. And then we had ancient ice sheets on North America, and this is gone. Ancient ice sheet on Russia, this is gone. On Scandinavia, this is gone. So what happened? Why did this melt? Did these ice sheets melt? And when you look at these graphs, temperature going up and down and up and down and up and down, and these are the graphs that climate skeptics say, you see, temperature changes is of all times. Yeah, it seems so. And when you go back about 100,000 years, there was this massive ice sheet lying on North America and Scandinavia and Russia. Why did it form? What caused this? And why did it just wash away? Why did it melt? Sorry. And scientists, geologists say, this is caused by the Milankovitch cycles. Milankovitch was a Serbian mathematician who also was interested in this phenomenon of ice formation, and why did it wax and why did it wane. Sorry, do I shout in your ear?
No, no.
No. So why did this happen? And so this guy Milankovitch made a mathematical theory about tilt angle of the Earth, and this wobble and eccentricity. So 3 factors that should cause the formation of ice sheets. And geologists still believe this. But when you look at the energy factors that come with Milankovitch cycles, they do not explain the enormous amount of energy changes, because these cycles are way too small,
Mm-hmm.
too weak to cause this. So, and then I looked into this, and I thought, okay, maybe this Hapgood guy is right about this. But I don't think shifting caused this. Maybe I can look at the orientation of ancient structures. And this is where I took some notes of my own theory.
Mm-hmm. Well, can we like maybe say what your theory is? So your theory is about ancient structures and why they were built.
Yes, because I do not often tell this, but I had a vision. I meditate every day, and I find this a necessary, even a crucial way of life, because I do not understand anymore how I did this when I was younger, and I do not understand why people don't do this. Because you just close your eyes, you don't have to do strange things. You don't have to follow a guru, or it's not forbidden, but you can just be with yourself in quietness. And I did this in 2015, meditate. And then suddenly I saw everything explode in a sort of a vision is something you see immediately, everything. And now I came out of my meditation, and I thought, wow, what was this? And it was after reading this Hapgood story, a few months after. I was busy, of course, with the theory, ice and ancient cultures and blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly saw it. You have to look at orientation of ancient structures. Okay. And
Wait,
then,
what did you see in your vision?
yes.
But what did you
Yes, my wife also asked this, what did you see? I said, sweetheart, I don't know.
Was it realization more? Like was it like
Yeah,
a light
just
bulb moment?
you see everything at the same time. And when
Mm-hmm.
I try to break this down into pieces, I saw an earth. I saw an earth growing. I saw these ancient cultures fade away. I saw that these structures turned on this crust, pointing to another place than they were originally pointing. I saw this walking of the North Pole. I just saw, when you see, like, yes, maybe this is the best example, like you make, time lapse video of a tree
Oh,
growing,
okay. Yeah.
and you put this camera for about 50 years on the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Every day it makes a picture for 50 years. And then you look at this video and you say, wow, that looks nice.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look outside, you don't see anything. You think this tree has been there for ages. Of course, we know trees come and go. But if you do not know trees come and go, you think this tree has been there forever and will stay there. But when you look at this time lapse, you see this small tree growing. This is how I saw this earth, this
Okay.
this, this vision. It's just whoop. And then it took me. I was a bit of sick, headache for days, and then I tried to unravel what did I see. I understood this is significant. I have to do something with this,
Mm-hmm.
and so I understood I had to look at orientation of ancient structures. And so I started with what did I know really about ancient structure? And I went to Giza, I went to Mexico, I went to this and this, and in Italy and in Spain, and of course in France and everywhere, looking at all these before this time. So, but what did I knew? I knew 20 structures. This is nothing. So I had to make database. Who knows about all these structures in the world? Then you come across Wikipedia. Then you come across websites about ancient structures in the Americas. So I had to gather all this information. It took me pretty long time to build this. And then I had to look for ways to study orientation of these things, because orientation is really a not studied topic. When you look at maps of archaeologists, you see this north arrow, but the north arrow is not accurate. It's just pointing somewhere. They think north is there, or they take a compass, but this compass is deviating from true north. So we have magnetic north and you have true north. You also interviewed Ben Davidson, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Ben Davidson is a smooth talker. He's much more quick than me. And he's looking at the magnetic north. And magnetic north is walking around. It's like a spinning top. It spins around, makes these eights all the time over long periods of time. But true north is pretty stable. It's the physical rotation axis of the Earth.
Yeah.
And somehow this magnet inside the Earth wobbles, or this force changes somehow. But so when archaeologists look at north, they take a compass, usually, and this compass deviates. So perhaps 11 degrees or whatever, depending on the place you are. So these maps had to be corrected and verified by looking at satellite imagery of these structures. So this research took me very long time. Until I was finished with my database, about 5 years. So pretty long time. And then in this period, I built my theory at the same time. So I started with 100 structures, and these 100 structures already showed something significant. Because and this is what I noted down, I discovered that later, when I had 1,200 structures in my database, that 51% of the structures orients in a 20% region. People think,
wait, what does that mean?
Okay, yes, what does this mean? So these 51, so I have 100 in my database, 1,200 structures. This is 100%. And I learned from my vision, I had to define what orientation is. And I verified this later with a mathematician, because I'm engineer, I'm good in math, but I'm not a mathematician per se, per sang, not a theorist. And then I talked about how to define unambiguously orientation of a square or rectangular structure. When I do not know anything about this, he says 90 degrees. 90 degrees. I said, okay, 90 degrees. What does 90 degrees mean? Because I do not know anything about this 4 squared structure, how it was meant to be, why it was built, why it was oriented in this way. So he said, okay, 90 degrees is the only unambiguous orientation you can have.
90 degrees from the ground towards up.
So you have this. This is an ancient structure. It can orient like this, 360 degrees.
Okay.
But he said, you can only unambiguously do it in 90 degrees. And this is very hard to grasp for most people. because they say, but there is a door here.
Mm-hmm.
So I can uniquely orient this door 360 degrees. And say, no, because you don't know if this was originally oriented, meant to be. Maybe something cataclysmic happened, because this is my theory. And if something cataclysmic happened, this orientation of this door changed. And I don't know in which direction it went. So I only have, and most people have troubles with this, not only you. So when you want to define a mathematical theory about orientation of ancient structures, you are left with only 90 degrees. So when I started researching this, I discovered that 51, and I will explain this deeper, because this will be difficult for most people. 51 of the structures, ancient structures, are oriented in a 20% region. So
Well,
let's
51 from 1200, 51 structures from 1200.
Yes, it's about 600. People say, oh, it's not much, because I thought it was 100%. No, it's not 100%. This is impossible. So this
means 51% of 1200 or 51 structures?
No, 51%.
51%, okay.
So about 600
okay.
oriented in a 20% region. So when going back to this definition of orientation, this, maybe I should do this, like this. There's a sticker on the back. No, never mind. For example, let's go to Mexico. Mexico, North America. I go to some structure. Never mind what structure. Then I have this 90%, 90 degrees orientation, unambiguously. Not 360, 90 degrees. So it can be oriented towards Greenland or oriented away from Greenland. And here is where the magic happens. Because 95% of the, 90% of the ancient structures in the Americas, everything is oriented between 0 and 45 degrees towards Greenland. And this is fascinating, because this already fascinated some archaeologists. And they researched this, a few, and they came up with theories about Venus in the sky and fake theories, fake ideas. And lately, these discoveries done with LiDAR, scanning the canopies, scanning the jungle in Mexico and Guatemala and the Amazon rainforest, they found ancient structures beneath the soil, hidden, deeply away. What is this doing here? And all these structures are also oriented towards Greenland. Fascinating enough.
Why Greenland?
Because, and now it comes, because I also studied orientation of ancient structures on the southern hemisphere towards Antarctica. And it follows the same pattern, but much less big. So Antarctica shifted as well, but not so much, a little bit. So
maybe that's why the ice is more older than the northern ice.
Yes, that's why. And there's only one mechanism that can explain this phenomenon. And here it comes. And that is expansion of the Earth.
From the north then?
Yes, because I can back relate the northern hemisphere, this shift of the North Pole, and southern hemisphere, this little shift. They follow the same pattern, because I can pattern match these things, these movements. And when patterns match, I can say with almost 100%, this is the same pattern I'm looking at. But the one is much bigger than the other one. What does this mean? I can recalculate the circumference of the Earth. And from this calculation comes the diameter of the Earth during a certain pole. That is not the only one thing I can do. I can also match the patterns with the ice age graph. So when I look at the ice age graph, temperature graph taken from Antarctica, they go up and down and up and down and so on. And when I think, okay, when a pole moves, not magnetic pole, physical pole, it means a climatic change.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone will agree with me. Even the most hardened skeptic will agree. When the physical pole moves, it means a climatic change. And when this pattern exactly matches the climatic changes on the South Pole, I have a match. And when this is almost 100%, I have a theory that I can say of, okay, it means these poles are this old. It means that when these poles moved, the crust did not shift, the Earth expanded. And this is crazy stuff, real crazy stuff, because I can relate one terrain to another with pattern matching. And then of course, I can go on, make theories. Okay, what does this mean for gravity? What does this mean for dinosaurs? Did you already interviewed someone about dinosaurs?
No.
You should do this because this is an interesting topic. You have flying dinosaurs, you have walking dinosaurs, and this is also difficult engineering stuff. When you calculate the bone pressure and the buckling strength of bones of dinosaurs, they do not match. So it means there had to be a lower gravity.
Oh, interesting.
And okay, thinking about, when you take the Bible, whatever you think about of the Bible, when you take the Bible and read about Genesis, there were times there were giants on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a cataclysm. God was angry, flooded the earth, wiped away the giants and all the evil people, and it all started again. Where did I see this? So this becomes an interesting big picture. And of course, I started to, when I discovered this about expanding Earth and ancient structures, so they are not, for example, some structures in Mexico are not 2,000 years old. They are 150,000 years old, 200,000 years old. But they were once covered with soil, with meters of soil. And archaeologists took it away, polished the structure, and said, look, beautiful structures built by the Mayans 2,000 years ago. But who has the original state of the structure? Did you also capture this? In what state did you find this original structure? Oh, we don't know because the archives are gone due to fire. Okay, how can you say? Because we have carbon-14 dating. Really? But carbon-14 dating cannot go beyond 10,000 years because the calibration curve goes not further than 10,000 years. People say, no, calibration, carbon-14 can go to 60,000 years. No, it's not true. Because the curve has to be calibrated by dendrology, by these tree rings, And so when it's not calibrated, when you use an uncalibrated tool, you cannot measure. Of course you can measure, but the measurements are uncalibrated. So that's one point. And then another, when, for example, something organic, what that was sitting in between those stones is of organic material or of organic origin. And maybe this structure is insanely old. Then you won't find any traces of this organic material. So how do you verify this stone structure to be this old? You cannot, because you cannot date the stone itself. You can only do it indirectly. I call this circumstantial dating. So this all becomes a big and difficult terrain, because I cover in my theory not only the full geology, also the full archaeology and the full paleontology. So this is big. And
so we now established that the explanation why the Southern Pole and the North Pole have different ice and South Pole's more older is because it's expanding from the top, a little bit from the South Pole as well, but from the top. Now we also established that 51% of the ancient structures, they are oriented at Greenland. So why these ancient civilizations, why did they need to orient them towards Greenland?
Yes, that's a good question, because now it becomes a bit difficult in some sense. Yes, also speculative. Look at, for example, Giza structure.
Mm-hmm.
It is perfectly cardinal oriented. Why? Look at the White House. It is cardinally oriented. Why? Look at the grid of borders and roads in the United States. It is cardinally oriented, most of them. Why? Why are most observatories cardinally oriented? Why? Why do architects have the undesirable habit? No, not undesirable, uncontrollable habit to want their structure to cardinally oriented when they have the possibility. If you give an architect freedom, not oriented to the grid of the roads or something else, they want to, in most cases, they want to try to cardinally orient the structure. Why? Why? You can say, okay, when, for example, imagine yourself, orientation is the least studied topic in science. Just say this off the bat. I don't know why. Don't know why. Because maybe it has no units attached to it. So orientation is unitless. And when something is unitless, it has no kilos, no meters, no speed, no weight, and so on. So you cannot study it in materialistic sense. Can you still follow me?
Yes. I'm just my mind is wondering, like trying to come up with ideas why it could be like Greenland. But yeah. No, but I understand what you're saying.
You know, we don't have to solve, because when you look at human history over the last 10,000 years, it is madly complicated, because you have kings and tribes and wars and borders and countries and rulers. It's incredibly complicated. And then you have the Greeks, and then the Sumerians and the Romans and the medievals and Genghis Khan and all sorts of mad kings. This is incredibly complicated history, let alone when I say ancient human history is 450,000 years old. This is incredibly complicated, incredibly complicated. You cannot study this ancient history by looking at egos and persons and kings and rulers. You must do it mathematically without kilos, time, seconds, distances attached to it. You can only do this without units. And that is why orientation is the key. So orientation is unitless. Position on the earth is unitless. Expansion in ratios is unitless. So, of course, when you talk about expansion in kilometers, you attach a unit to it, but only after going back to the current state of the earth, back to an ancient past. So my theory is crazy.
So what is
So
your theory?
my theory is, yes, a good question. What is my theory? People can read this on my website, of course. This is not an easy read. My theory is that ancient humans were around for much longer time than we think. They have been building, structuring much longer than we think. There have been cultures far more advanced than we think, for a far longer time than we think. And they were slowly, very slowly, by powerful processes, diminished in population size due to expansion. It's a cataclysmic, slow, very slow cataclysmic event that takes place over tens of thousands of years. And of course, it is powerful and violent, but this process slowly diminishes the success rate of a population. So it starts to migrate. People start to fight, have clashes, because migration always comes with troubles. For example, it's not. What is my theory? It's complicated. When I want to summarize my theory in a few sentences, it is this: the Earth has expanded over 1 million years, the last 1 million years, quite rapidly, quite violent and big. The continents we see today were all joined together. Ancient civilizations, far more advanced than we think, were building structures. About 50% of them were oriented to the cardinals, to their North Pole. This changed. And due to this expansion, their orientation changed as well. And this leaves some signals behind. And I studied these signals. And these signals led me to a crazy theory that people can read on my website.
So does that mean that their true North Pole was Greenland at the time when those structures were constructed?
Yes.
And then
Even more,
because
yeah.
it expanded, so now it's a little bit off to the side
Yeah.
because of the expansion, but it remained to be its North Pole. I mean, it remains because the structures. Okay. But you also say that there were, so how many times did the North Pole shift? Is there like, can we approximately know how many North Poles were there?
Yes, I have a co-researcher who says, I don't agree, but okay. I say it changed 5 times. So 6 poles, 5 changes. And I can only trace back 5 changes. Mathematically, 100% closed. And then there are, of course, suggestions and ideas and mad ideas about 15 changes. I don't know. I cannot trace this back.
Right. But the South Pole remained relatively in the same place.
Relatively in the same place. It changed as well, but not so much.
Okay. So then you're saying that the expansion is slow, but there are cataclysms that come with it. So does that mean there were sudden shifts in a
Yes,
way?
in geological terms, sudden shifts. In people's terms, it goes so slow, about 20 meters per year, the shift of the pole on average. So there's not so much.
Is it still shifting now, do you
No,
think?
no.
No, it stopped
But it's maybe when I look at my theory, it will be shifting in the future.
again. Hmm.
Yeah, again. But this is not cataclysmic for the ego, you know. We will not experience this significantly. But for a civilization, yes, it is cataclysmic.
Over a
So for
period of time.
civilization over thousands of years, it is cataclysmic. And
Hmm.
then my
But
theory,
for a single lifetime, it's not noticeable. But for a long period of time, it is
yeah,
cataclysmic. Hmm.
yes, yes, for a civilization, it is cataclysmic, yes, because it means periods of change, radical change, periods of turmoil, and maybe what we see today, climatic change, is maybe part of this as well. Because when you look at the big graph
Hmm.
taken on Antarctica, you see this temperature rising, 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 and it starts to not stop rising and then wobble, 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 and then it will go down again. And this downward slope, I call this the expansion phase, and the
Hmm.
upward slope, this is the recuperation phase of the biosphere.
Hmm.
So it is, of course, I'm working on a book, and people are constantly asking, how are you doing with the book, and when is the book out? And it takes a long time to explain this
Yeah.
in a way that is coherent for people.
Hmm.
Because when I hear myself talking, it is a pretty incoherent theory,
Hmm. Yeah.
and
Okay.
that is, of course, the problem when
Mm.
you try to stitch something this big together. It it is difficult to make it coherent. So you, and that's why I made a mind map. It's also on my website. Mind map. This mind map makes this big thing with all these clouds together, and it's it stitches it a bit together. So what relates to what,
Hmm.
and we can maybe we have little time left.
So for example, Göbeklitepe, is it oriented at north? Which North Pole is it oriented? Greenland?
Yes, Göbeklitepe is clearly following in this pattern of movement. Göbeklitepe Göbeklitepe is not built 12,000 years ago. It is built over a period of 350,000 years in stages.
Oh, really? So it's built
Yes,
in stages. So
in
do you think
stages.
they knew? So they knew that the North Pole is changing and they were tracking it?
Of course they
Hmm.
knew. Because these ancient tribes were not as ignorant as we today, because we think we know everything.
Hmm.
And we think the earth is a stable, dead stone. But the earth is a living organism. And so these people were, you know, they were ancient tribes, like in the Egyptian priesthood had initiation ceremonies. So people were initiated in secret ideas, secret philosophies, secret thinking. Why is this secret? Because most people are too stupid to understand this. Why throw pills for swines? You know,
Hmm.
don't do this. Just keep it for yourself, and or keep it for a small group. And maybe I I should have done this. Keep it for a small group, but I decided not to do this. I decided to, and in the same time, it is difficult to explain it, you know. And ancient people, have you ever heard of Yukteswar?
No.
No, because this guy, did you hear of Yogananda?
No.
Yogananda is one of the most successful Hindu gurus in the West. And of course, his teachings did not come from air. He was taught by Yukteswar. And Yukteswar wrote a little book called The Holy Science. And this Holy Science is madly difficult to read. And he describes in this book how consciousness of ancient peoples followed a pattern of 24,000 years. It's a mad cycle. So he describes that Kali Yuga, then you have Dwapara Yuga, Tetra Yuga, and Satya Yuga. These are 4 stages. And every stage, for example, Kali Yuga, the Romans and the medieval people lived in Kali Yuga. And they came from the Greek. So the Greek civilization is pretty advanced. We know this because we still quote Plato and his followers. Because the Greek lived in a higher yuga already. And then he describes this cycle of 24,000 years. And we just entered with the discovery of electricity. We discovered Dwapara Yuga. We just entered Dwapara Yuga. And it will still take about 3,000 years, so something like this, to stay in Dwapara Yuga, the second stage of consciousness. And then after this 3,000 years, we will enter into Tetra Yuga, again a higher state of consciousness. And some people on this planet are already higher in consciousness. And they understand that the Earth is a living organism, because how can a dead organism give life to living beings? Life can only give life
to, yeah.
So how obvious is this? So this Earth is a living organism that grows, expands, resonates, changes. These ancient people knew this. And they started to understand, or they tried to understand the behavior of this living organism.
So going back to Göbeklitepe, how many North Poles does it track?
It tracks from Pole 4. That is what I can verify. I have this on my website, by the way. It tracks from somewhere in between Pole 5 and Pole 4. It's somewhere around 350,000 years. It starts very vaguely, and then it grows stronger and bigger. So the younger the structures are, the larger they become, and the more complicated they become. So it starts rudimentary, and they grow in size, and they follow the path of the pole, obviously.
The North Pole.
The North Pole, yes.
Does it also track South Pole? No. Or is it?
Okay. No, it cannot. You can only track the
what's
pole on the hemisphere you are. So if you're on the northern hemisphere, you only track the North Pole.
And so does that mean that they would, because it's hundreds and thousands of years ago, right? I mean, we don't assume that they lived so long, or do we? Or how do they know that they have to update the structure? Or was the information passed on for hundreds and thousands of years ago?
Yes, and here comes in this consciousness. If you have a high consciousness, you can tap into this field of ancient knowledge and wisdom. So what is left in this, some people call this Akasha field. Have you heard of the Akasha field?
No.
The Akasha field, everything you say, think, and do is stored in a field. And if you can tap into this field, you can tap knowledge from it. Not everything at the same time, because your head will explode. But you have to focus specifically on a topic.
And download information. I think I heard.
Download certain information. And so I do not say that people per se use this. They also understood, maybe from ancient lore, we call this lore in English, I believe, that this structure there, over there, was used to look at the sky and the stars and to study the movements. And we decided to build a new one because this old structure of our great, 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 great grandparents does not work anymore. So we have to build a new one. And this new one will be oriented to our current North Pole. And so we can track the movements of the sky and the stars. And this process of reorientation, you see this in Göbeklitepe, obviously. This one, just one structure. And this structure, Göbeklitepe, is not in my database. So there's an interesting thing happening. I have a theory about square and rectangular structures, orientation, 90 degrees, blah, 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 blah. And they make up a pattern of pole movements. And then I started to look at a structure that is not in my database. Look if this structure is following this pattern of poles. And if it does, it proves that my theory is right. And it proves that Göbeklitepe is as ancient as the poles. And it proves that Göbeklitepe is following this pole movement. This is one. Take it second. I go to Stonehenge. Stonehenge is not in my database. I have a theory about ancient worlds, ancient structures, blah, blah, blah. I go to look at Stonehenge. Stonehenge has just one symmetry axis. What a symmetry axis is, I can have objects that have one or more symmetry axes. Stonehenge has just one. So I look at the orientation of this symmetry axis. And if this symmetry axis is oriented to one of my poles, it probably was oriented during this pole, to this North Pole.
Yeah.
Okay. What does this mean for the latitude of this structure? It means that Stonehenge was oriented or located on this specific latitude at that time. And that is not the same latitude as England today.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then I start to look at, okay, what does this mean? Then it means that Stonehenge was symmetrically oriented to the North Pole. So we have a solstice to the for the rising sun. We have a solstice for the setting sun. We have a solstice for the summer. We have a solstice for the winter. Rise, summer rise, winter set, summer set. Wow, that's interesting. And this fits exactly in Stonehenge. So it does not fit only orientation, it also fits the solstice angles for the latitudes, specific latitudes at which Stonehenge was originally built. And this is big. And this is so difficult to grasp for most people because it's purely mathematical. And I made a short video about this, Stonehenge, how I did this, to make people understand how it works. And of course, the difficult thing about this is to grasp this for people in its totality. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my understanding of the world? What does it mean of my grasp of history? What did I learn on school? And then I have a Harvard scientist with big pay grades and high intelligence, and they tell Stonehenge is 8,000 years old. Think, well, this weird guy, Buildreps, don't know. But
so, at which North Pole? When was it built?
270,000 years ago.
Okay, and that means that Göbeklitepe is older than Stonehenge because Göbeklitepe already has the North Pole orientation that Stonehenge has.
Yes, Göbeklitepe has
Several.
a history of changes, and Stonehenge was built once.
Once.
Yes,
It was
and it
not
is
updated.
yes
The
never up.
offsprings didn't get the
No,
information.
no, they didn't understood. They didn't understand why it was built, when it was built, why it was built for, and it doesn't work anymore. So this instrument is obsolete.
Are there any other structures that are possible to use and s- add another North Pole, or all of them are obsolete now?
Most ancient structures are obsolete because they are not cardinally oriented. But for example, Giza is. So if Giza was an observatory, what I doubt, I think it was a power plant. Just a magnificent, huge power plant built by smart people about 15,000 years ago. I have evidence for this as well. Because when you go back to the yugas, this consciousness changes.
Wait, 15,000 years ago?
15,000
Wait,
years
does
ago.
that mean that Stonehenge is older?
Oh, way older.
Older. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So our current physical pole, North Pole, South Pole, is stable, became stable 26,000 years ago. So it moved from 130,000 years ago. It moved, changed, the Earth expanded a little bit, poles changed, over a course of 104,000 years.
And
stabilized 26,000 years ago.
what
And then,
structure has it recorded as a North Pole, which is current North Pole?
for example, Giza and many more.
Giza. Okay. Because
Giza,
it's 50,000 years ago. Oh, so the Giza has oriented at our current true North
yes,
Pole.
yes, without a doubt. And there are many more structures that are cardinally oriented, ancient structures that are built way longer time ago than we think. So this Giza was built during the high consciousness phase, not 5,000 years ago by some crazy pharaoh.
No.
Absolutely not. They were built by some people think aliens. I think not. I think when consciousness rises to crazy high levels, people can do things that are unimaginable for us.
Yeah.
Because when you know that everything vibrates, there is no physical stuff. Everything is vibration. You know, when you know this and you can tap into this knowledge on a deep, deep level, you can manipulate matter in all kinds of ways. And easy lift a stone of 10,000 tons or more. Because it's illusionary. Weight, time, matter, it's all an illusionary aspect of the soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard that
That's it.
somewhere you can, since everything is waves, so if you find the right frequency,
Yes.
then you can, even if heavy or not heavy doesn't matter, it becomes irrelevant.
Yes. You are like a radio.
Mm.
So consciousness is like the button you turn for the right frequency. You can do this. And of course, when you like have a sort of button on your radio that you can hear all the frequencies at the same time, you will start to run crazy.
Yeah.
So you better narrow this down to a specific frequency.
Yeah.
And this is what visions maybe are. They little bit widen your band on your radio so you can take in some specific information all at once. And most people are unaware. Their body is a sort of radio. They can tune in whatever they want to tune in. You can be what you want. Of course, when you look at YouTube videos, people say guru-like people, you can be what you want to be. You
Mm-hmm.
can create what you want to create. And that is true. So if you want to be a billionaire, imagine to be a billionaire and believe it. Really, you are a billionaire and you will become a billionaire. But will you be happy? Is this what? And this is the paradox. A high consciousness does not want you to be a billionaire specifically. It wants you to have purpose for your specific purpose for your soul. So it is not what I believe. I'm sure it works. I know it works. So you came here to the earth for a specific goal. You
But
as
wait,
well, Louisa.
set by who?
Hmm?
Set by who? Who decided what's the purpose of us?
Yourself.
Yeah, but
Yourself. You decided what are you going to do on this planet?
oh, before ending up
Yes.
on this planet? Oh, okay.
Yes.
But then
Yeah.
you forgot, then you want something else, and then your soul
Yes.
is like, no. Okay.
And then it becomes difficult. You grow up, you have parents, you have things being told, and you go to school, you learn stuff, and then you slowly,
Get off
slowly
track.
go off track.
Uh-huh.
Your purpose is when your soul before reincarnation. I encourage people to read specific books,
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, the God series of now I forgot his name. Mike Hockney. Mike Hockney.
Mm-hmm.
He's an Illuminati, and he wrote a series of books about how the universe works. And then there is another book that I want people to read about reincarnation. It's written by Michael Newton. It's called Life Between Lives. So when you believe you are just a physical being doing nothing without purpose on this rock that's floating around in space, then your life is pretty meaningless, probably. But when you find out more, you will start to see meaning, what specifically you want to do on this planet, and what the meaning of your life specifically is. So it's quite philosophical.
Yeah.
And
But I think there are some souls that probably come without purpose, don't you think? I feel like I meet people and they're very happy, and I think there could be some people who come with purpose and some they're just freestyle it. They're just
maybe,
for the
maybe,
ride. When you said this, I just remembered. Have you watched Terrence Howard's podcast with Joe Rogan? In the
yeah, yeah, believe, yeah.
right in the beginning, he says he was in the womb of his mother, and he kept saying himself, "Don't forget, don't forget, don't forget." So that came to my mind when you said we come with a purpose. We know why we're here. So I'm assuming given that it's true,
Yeah,
he knew this purpose and he didn't want to forget, and he knew he was going to forget. And interesting that he said that because
My first memory was almost like when you're dreaming and you're falling and you hit the bottom and you wake up. That was my first memory, but I didn't wake up here. I was inside my mother's womb. And I was about maybe 6 months inside the womb. And I'm like, okay, don't forget I'm here. Okay, okay. Don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. You go.
it was very
it
interesting how he
is
recalled
not.
that.
It does not count for all people. Like you say, for
Yeah.
example, if a domesticated tiger becomes a human, so domesticated tiger, wild predator, dies, knew how to be a little bit, knew how to be human, reincarnates as a human, it will become a predator human. It will become like a psychopath. So there are
Yeah.
a lot of different levels.
Yeah. So
So
that means, are you saying that the animals also have souls?
Yes, sure.
Mm.
Everything has souls. Even the smallest atom is a soul.
So
That is
part
what
of
that's what the Illuminati call the monad, the monad theory. It's just a word, but so everything is made from souls contracted together.
yeah, or consciousness or light. I think there are different words also used.
Consciousness, light, but this is more like a big context. So consciousness is really everything. So the universe is conscious. So everything is conscious, and this is what the Shinto priests in Japan also say. Everything is consciousness. Shaolin monks also know this. Everything is consciousness. So when you can, so this stone, this brick, this artificially made brick, is artificial consciousness captured in the form of a brick made by people. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the purpose of tracking North Poles? Why would you do that?
Yeah, that is always a good question. When you start to build an observatory today, this observatory will always be cardinally oriented. Most of the observatories are cardinally oriented. So you know where east, west, north, and south is. Because, why is this? Because every astronomer thinks in terms of the north sky, the east sky, the west sky, south sky. And when you want to study the motions of the sky, you need to have a fixed point. And the only fixed point on the northern hemisphere is the North Pole. So when you orient your instrument to the North Pole, you can start to track the changes around this, referred to this North Pole.
But then ironically, the North Pole changes. So
Yes, but it takes a long time.
so then Stonehenge is older than Giza pyramids, and Göbeklitepe is older than Stonehenge and Giza. The
Yes,
oldest.
Göbeklitepe is its age is over a range. It started longer ago than Stonehenge, about 350,000 years. I have an article. I made it all free. I had
Yeah, I'll link it.
some articles. It's a big website with a lot of articles. So I encourage people. You will be reading for hours and hours on stuff to get a grasp, a glimpse on the theory.
Yeah. So how does so what do you think about the pole shift, and have you looked into the ECDO theory hypothesis?
What is this?
Exothermic, that the 104-degree shift,
No, I
Janibek
don't.
oscillation theory, how
No,
okay so
I know this. There's a theory about this Janibekov effect.
oscillation, yeah, the in the up in the without where there was no gravitation, the pin that spins and then it wobbles over. So the idea is that Earth is gonna do the same. It rotates
Maybe.
it and its own axis, and then one point it had to rearrange. So there's state one where the shifts 104 degrees and then shifts back, which is state two.
Yes. What do I find difficult about these theories is where is your basis? Where is your verification? You know, when I post a theory, I would like to test it somehow. So a theory must be testable, and that is what I did with my theory. I tested on ancient structures, just testing. And then when it works all the time, you have a successful theory. But when a theory is proposed, it's okay. Where's your mathematics behind it? Where are your observations? Where is your testing phase? You know? We of course, when you look at the Zani-Beckhoff effect, this this tennis racket theorem, when an object, a non-symmetrical object, is spinning, it flips around. Once in every few rotations, it just changes orientation.
It comes back. Yeah.
Yeah, and then flips back. And this is a crazy. Zani-Beckhoff, I believe, a Soviet scientist, discovered this in space.
Yeah.
And he of course, he long time it stayed under the radar, and suddenly it was discovered by a few people, and then they said, maybe this happened to the Earth. But I think the Earth is not asymmetrical enough regarding to its size. It's massive. And when you look at this massivity, of course, inside the Earth are blobs. And maybe these blobs can cause in rotation some changes, possibly. But this has to be verified somehow. And this is always the problem. Where is your verification? So I always have, I think it's interesting, great to look at this stuff, and great to think about this. What does this mean for me, or what does it mean for my ideas, or can I do something with this?
So how about floods? How do you, in your theory, explain the massive floods and also the ancient scriptures where they talk about end of the world events?
End of the world events, I don't believe in this sudden event. But the floods, how is it possible, for example, we find sea life fossils on mountain ranges? That is strange. It is pretty unexplained by geology. Of course, there are theories. When you look into the crust, there is about 3 times the oceans. So we have the volume of the oceans, and about 3 times that volume is captured in the crust in the form of a certain stone. I just forgot the name of the stone. It's a mineral, and under pressure, this mineral can contain water. But when pressure falls away, this mineral starts to bleed this water. So what I think what happened is, when we go back in time, so the Earth was smaller, all the continents were joined together. This is why we find similar life on all continents, because they can just move around on the planet everywhere. Then what I think, and this is not, I cannot verify this, I think what happened, Earth started to have a more active magnet inside. And this magnet caused to draw in matter from the sun. So these subatomic particles were caught in the magnetosphere and put inside the Earth over a long period of time. And this formed new matter. So it caused pressure from the inside. And this pressure from the inside caused the crust to crack open.
Yeah.
And this crust contained massive amounts of water. And these cracks started to bleed water in large quantities. And this flooded the Earth. And this water was not sweet. This water was salt, because it takes minerals from inside the Earth with it. This is how the ocean became salt. Because if you look at geological theories, how the oceans became salt, there is no good explanation for this. But it's because it comes from the inside of the Earth, I think.
So they were not salty before?
No,
Okay.
only sweet water. And so this process of breaking up and growing continued, and it began to form basins between the continents, because these continents did not grow. They broke up, So between the continents, there was a sort of basin formed in which the water that was initially on the continents flowed back. And so the land masses, continents became dry, but it left traces of sea life.
Okay. So that's the seas then, like the Black
Yes,
Sea,
this is seas. And
Mediterranean.
the Black Sea is something else. The Black Sea is sweeter than Mediterranean. And that's because it's the street of, this Turkey, this Istanbul street.
Channel?
Channel. This, this channel, when the Russian Black Sea Fleet wants to go to the Mediterranean, they have to go to I forgot his name. You have to look it up.
Okay, I'll find it.
So if Erdogan decides to close the street, the Russian Black Sea Fleet has a problem. But this channel, somehow in the ancient past, the Black Sea was sweet, and when during sea level rise, this salt water from the Mediterranean flowed into the Black Sea.
Oh, okay.
And this is how it became more salty.
So, okay. So then the floods, because we have the traces of these floods, right? There's an evidence of happening this violent and floods towards North America. And so what is, in your theory, how does that fit in? Is it because of the sudden moves of these crust opening expansion, or is there any other explanation?
No, I think the only explanation is expansion. So the crusts moved away from each other, and this whole mechanism caused this North Pole migration and this changes of ice sheets.
But it can happen since it's sudden and it causes a violent flood, and but it's not possible to predict when that's going to happen.
Not really. You can predict. It's like climate change. You can predict climate change over a course of 200 years, but you cannot predict what it will do tomorrow. Same with this. I can predict there will be a next cycle. It starts probably in 5 or 10,000 years. It will last a few 10,000s of years.
You mean like the ice age? Or the
it's not an ice age. We call it an ice age, but it was not an ice age. It was an expansion cycle. So when you look at this graph from Antarctica, this temperature graph over 450,000 years or 800,000 years, depending on the station, the drilling station, you see this temperature going up and down. But this is not an ice age. This was an expansion cycle. And this is quite different. Can you still follow me?
Yes. So there's a cycle of, let's say, global cooling and global warming. Is that it goes cooler and warmer, but that follows the expansion cycle.
Yeah, exactly. When the temperature drops, and you're looking at such a graph, the temperature drops, you're looking at an expansion cycle. Yes.
But right now it's warm. So, but we're heading to cooling.
Yes, we are heading to a next expansion cycle,
which is going to be cooling.
No, because this graph shows cooling, but it's how deuterium levels are interpreted. This is not cooling, this is expansion. And of course, it will have effect on climatic changes. Warmer, colder, changes here, changes there, turmoil, and much volcanic activity, of course.
So once we enter the expansion cycle, we are in the expansion cycle, there's more volcanic activity, the climate changes, but you said not necessarily cooling. So are we going to notice any change in the whether it's going to get colder or hotter?
It will initially start very slow. So NASA satellites will observe changes in the geometric shape, geometric properties of the Earth,
Yeah.
very slow. And that will mean the cycle will begin.
So, okay, but the cycle begins, but during the cycle, at some point, there's going to be a sudden change, like a burst of
Sudden, but slowly. It will start overnight, but it will
Uh-huh.
start slow, very
Uh-huh.
slow.
Uh-huh.
I think it already started in a sense. We give cars and human activity to blame for climate change, but I think this is true, but it's not the whole story. I think we're looking at a combination, a mix of changes together. So when I break down the changes human activity has caused over the centuries, I think this is true. But there is also a volcanic activity going up for centuries already. And volcanic activity going up is a clear sign for an upcoming change. And this will take centuries, of course.
Yeah. So volcanic activity increasing means we are entering the expansion cycle.
Yes, absolutely. This is what I'm not believe, but this is what I'm sure of.
Oh,
Volcanic activity is a sign of internal increasing activity.
but you're saying that we will be in the expansion cycle in 5,000 years. Not now, not anytime soon, not in our lifetime.
This is what I predict, to be a little bit more careful. Because when I say I think we enter the next cycle in 10 years, some people might start to panic. Because Mario Buildreps said, and he has a good theory, he knows everything.
Yeah, but
No, I won't say this. I won't predict this.
no, but like, is it in our lifetime or not?
I think it already started.
Oh, okay. We are already
Yeah,
in the
centuries ago.
cycle.
Yes,
Years
yes.
ago.
Not
Okay.
in the expansion cycle, not expansion per se, but in the internal activity. Because the Earth is so big,
Yeah.
this process starts slowly, and builds up. And suddenly it exceeds a certain threshold of internal
Tension.
tension.
Okay. So, so the process started once there's a sudden expansion, then there's a stability. There's for a quite long time, right? The true north stays where it is. Once it's
Yes.
moved, it stays where it is for a very long time, and then it goes into expansion cycle again.
Yeah.
And we are already in the expansion cycle. Okay, so what would be the what should we expect? More volcanic activity. What else? Like for an average person, what would happen in our life? I mean, is there going to be more floods? What should we expect?
To be honest, I think we should expect some very unpleasant things, but they are caused by human activity. They're not directly connected to the expansion cycle itself. Because when we study the atmosphere, you have two main layers. That is the troposphere, that's the low layer. So airplanes fly in the top of the troposphere.
Yeah.
And then you have the stratosphere. The stratosphere
Yeah.
expands to 50 kilometers. So you have from 0 to 12 kilometers troposphere, from 12 to 50 kilometers stratosphere. When you look at the temperature of the stratosphere, it is cooling rapidly, really rapidly. Much more cooling down than the troposphere is heating. And this is causing some raising eyebrows among climatologists. What is happening here? And of course, this is when you look at this balance between the two. One is troposphere is rising, the stratosphere is cooling. And when you add them together, they even out. There's nothing happening. Of course, we don't live in the stratosphere, we live in the troposphere. We live on Earth. So for us, is this climatological change can be dramatic. But this mixing effect will become stronger and stronger the more differentiation is between temperatures. And this might cause the short-term cataclysm for civilizations. Because imagine when the stratosphere decides to cool the troposphere, it will become much colder in Europe. It will become much colder in North America and in Russia as well. So this is the not related topic to expansion or to long-term cataclysm. This is the human-caused cataclysm. We do it
What
ourselves.
exactly is causing the stratosphere to cool?
Because the troposphere keeps its heat trapped due to CO2. Rising CO2,
But the
people,
greenhouse effect.
the greenhouse effect is real. It's not a imaginary thing of crazy people. It's real. It's real. We can measure this as well. But because the troposphere keeps the warmth for itself, the troposphere inevitably cools down. And this is what we see in measurements. Troposphere cooling down much more rapidly than the troposphere is going up. And these two effects seem to even out each other. And this is the upcoming cataclysm for us.
What is this cataclysm? What does that entail?
Of course, I don't know that. I cannot predict this exactly, but it will cause much more extreme weather. Not a bit.
So like extreme cold, extreme heat in different places.
Extreme cold, extreme drought, extreme rain. Yeah.
And
this
the
is
ice caps melting because of the heat.
Yes. But Greenland melting is of course caused by rising troposphere temperatures, but also by the warm Gulf Stream. The warm Gulf Stream is eroding the ice cap away from beneath.
But that's not caused by the greenhouse effect.
Partially, maybe, but it's still cold. It's still freezing, pretty well freezer in Greenland.
Yeah.
But of course, this effect of the warm Gulf Stream is strong. It's really strong, and it erodes away this Greenland ice sheet. Yeah.
So then, what exactly? We're talking about this that human caused extreme weather. How are we making this greenhouse effect? What exactly? I mean, I'm sure there's one thing, but what are those things?
Yes, it's a mix of effects. Of course, the emitting greenhouse gases is one. Some people don't believe it, but it's real. We can measure this. And second thing is maybe this is even a more stronger effect is we cut forests. And when you are in an urbanized area, it easily is 5 degrees hotter in summer than in forest areas. And these roads, this asphalt you put everywhere, buildings, asphalt, they collect heat, they trap heat, and they try to emit this at night. They want to emit this into the space. But they can't because the CO2 and the greenhouse gases trap their heat. So they keep containing, and this is how slowly the temperature is going up. And when you stop CO2 overnight, immediately, we will also cause a catastrophe because it will cool down very rapidly. So this phasing out, we must do this phasing out slowly.
I'm interested in also methane, how the cows, the burps, and so on, the gas, is it also causing the greenhouse effect specifically coming from cows?
Yes, it's a very powerful greenhouse effect, but methane is a short-living element in the biosphere. So it easily CO2 is stable. It stays in the atmosphere much longer, for decades. Methane has a lifespan of a few months, so it bonds to all kind of other binds to all kind of other minerals and materials.
So in your opinion, is it like a strong contribution to the greenhouse effect or not?
No. In my opinion, no.
So you
Of
don't
course, it
necessarily.
contributes. It is a very strong greenhouse effect, but we are talking about the long-term greenhouse effect caused by CO2. This is more serious. And
Yeah.
of course, we emit much more CO2 than methane.
I guess I am concerned about specifically children at school. My kids at school are being taught that they should be vegan because the cows cause methane and that causes greenhouse effect and that causes extreme weather and that and not only if you eat meat, not only because of the gas itself, but because the transportation and so on. So I'm concerned how what are the we should, I guess when we talk about greenhouse effect, I think there's a lot of vagueness in it. And then there's like what are the costs and benefits of you stopping eating meat and methane causing the greenhouse effect. I think that should be talked. Like
I
what
think
exactly.
I think if your children are wise in this respect, because I don't eat meat as well for two reasons. It draws down your consciousness because these animals were suffering, and you basically eat suffering. That's one. And secondly, 1 gram of animal protein requires many times vegetable proteins to be produced. And this whole process around this production of vegetable protein for animal consumption to produce 1 gram of animal protein produces a lot of harmful materials and gases. So that's the reason why I don't do this. 2 reasons.
So okay, the first one I understood. The second one, 1 gram of animal protein requires. Are you actually talking about the greenhouse effect here?
It's also because greenhouse effect is directly related to production. So, for example, when I have 1 hectare of soybean,
Yeah.
it is monoculture, and monoculture is not good for climate because you better have forest or multiculture.
Yeah.
And this process of 1 hectare of soybean protein eventually ends up in a small, what you use for animal consumption, ends up in a very small portion of animal protein for consumption. So this is a very ineffective process, and there are of course people who are so extremist in this. They have calculated all kind of models, made all kind of models about this, how inefficient this process is, and this causes, of course.
No, I think like the second one, I think there could be different approaches. So if you are a farmer, then obviously it's a different situation. If you have your own, I mean, we did grow our own, you know, I mean, it's a completely different situation. But so right, so the first argument I understand, but then but didn't we as this is how we survived eating animals? Isn't like a part of the nature, the hunting and there's prey and then predators always they eat each other.
Yeah, that is part of the story. Because when Earth was in its turmoil phase, it was hard to settle down and to live, to build a culture. So we went to be hunter-gatherers for a very long time. And when you look at our ancestry, it seems as if they come out of the Stone Age for hundreds of thousands of years, and suddenly there is a culture, boom, out of nowhere. They start to settle down, and they start to build fences around their house, and they start to keep animals. Where does this come from so suddenly? Does it come from they start to wake up from just out of thin air, or did something stabilize? I think it's the latest, so the last. Something stabilized, and this gave people the possibility to settle down, to live a calm life. And it's not directly that we were hunter-gatherers for all the time Homo sapiens lived. They were, because we find these LiDAR scans in Guatemala, for example, find cities hidden under the soil, many meters, that show that they lived in relatively little areas, as many people as in Mexico City, packed together. This was a culture, an advanced culture, and archaeologists think this was 2,000 years ago, but this was, I'd say, 150, 200, 250,000 years ago. These cultures stabilized and were able to become a culture from hunter-gatherers, become more sophisticated and build cities. So this is what I think it happened, really happened.
Mm-hmm. But then why is it that our body is more better off with vitamins and, with meat than because there are a lot of cases where, especially for children, like without animal protein, difficult to have like a healthy growth for kids. So
I
how is it
think it's good. How old are your kids?
under 10?
Under 10. I think it's good to give them at least 2 times a week fish protein.
But do they not have soul or?
Yes, of course. But you look to this avatar. Just think the being for sacrificing his life for you. What's wrong with this?
Why can't we approach the same for cows and goats and sheep?
Same.
Okay.
If you can convince your children to eat meat.
No, they don't mind. But I'm interested in why we're not eating meat. So I guess I'm confused at why we're being told that we should be vegans if methane is not really a long-term problem for causing extreme weather.
Because I think the production of meat is really very, very harmful. Yeah, a harmful process.
Don't you think that it's very minuscule in comparison to the industrial production that's happening in China and India? Because it's never, or any other countries that I don't know, also like private jets and everything. So it's just really amazes me how we talk about meat that's important for kids at school when we could talk about all other things that are more important and that are more contributing to the extreme weather than children eating meat. So that's why I'm curious.
I understand. Of course, we have to start somewhere, and we can look at our neighbors and say they are still doing wrong things. So we decide to do wrong things as well.
But eating meat is not a wrong thing. Did you think eating meat is a wrong thing?
Yes, I think it is. Yes, I think it is.
Because of the first
argument? For me, it's a wrong thing to do. Yes.
It's because of your first argument that the animals have soul and we should not eat them, but not because of the climate impact.
It has 2 reasons. Because not specifically soul, but more that I do not want to. Because this vibration, you eat vibrations basically. Mm-hmm. These are low vibrations.
Okay.
And I think it's not good for if you want to develop your
So,
consciousness,
mhm,
all yogis know, don't eat meat
mhm, mhm. Oh,
because
okay. So the red meat, so the animals, they have higher vibrations, and let's say fish has low vibration. So for your consciousness, you can get away with consuming lower vibrational protein.
don't know higher, lower, just not the right vibrations for you. I think
Uh-huh.
it's maybe a better
Okay.
word.
And I'm just curious as to why specifically cows, right? So for even in Indian culture, cows are prohibited and they're like holy. So I'm just curious why specifically that animal.
Not also pigs and chicken
Yeah.
and yeah, same for me. But
Hmm.
it's my personal opinion. It's not my specifically my research or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
but it's my lifestyle
Yeah.
to eat as little meat and fish as possible.
Mm-hmm. Just to stay sort of healthy and maintain, but
Yeah,
not
yeah,
indulge, you know? Oh, I want
yeah,
my steak. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, I try to live a healthy lifestyle. I try to keep fit, and you see this pool bar behind me.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's what I practice. Do all kind of physical exercise, and I
Yeah.
think it's good to stay
Yeah.
healthy. And eating healthy is part of this lifestyle.
Yeah. No, for me, I totally agree with you. It's just I get a little bit annoyed when I hear how climate change is being weaponized and it's
Yes,
being
it's
used
weaponized,
to
but that is
yeah,
something else. That is
it is
something
something
else.
else, true.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's some ideas can be hijacked by certain groups
To use in their
to
own interests.
to make money,
Yeah.
to turn it in their own interest. Yes,
Yeah. But I
it's weapon.
still think it's very wrong to teach children at school about how cows are causing climate change and how they should not be eating meat. I think that's the wrong place to start this conversation, and that's why I was yeah I just I'm not really into um you know bypassing the actual more stronger arguments and then choosing an argument that's weak and also harmful for children, because if they stop eating protein at such a younger age, then it might have health impacts in the future. So why specifically are they being told about meat at this young age? So that was my
Yes, I understand your concerns. When I would have little children in this difficult time, yes, I would have also have troubles raising them. But happily, they are grown up. They are adults, and they have their own ideas. And so
yeah.
I understand your struggle because at schools they are indoctrinized with ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and they are a bit weaponized. And I think, yeah, I would have difficulty with this too. But what can you do? Can you go to the teacher and say, I
No,
don't want
because
you to do this?
I don't think they're doing it on purpose, right? So if you have been told the same information over and over again, you believe it and
Yes,
you
sure.
think you're doing a good thing. You actually think
Yeah,
you're doing a good thing. The same during the corona times. The doctors they thought that they're doing the good thing, injecting the vaccine. So I
yeah,
mean
I agree. This is. I'm happy you start. This is a whole other topic. But taking a vaccine, an experimental vaccine, it's. I sometimes say to people, use your healthy brain because you use a substance to activate your immune system to make something, to produce something, and then attacking it again. That doesn't sound good to me. I wouldn't do it. And in my direct surrounding, direct neighborhood, I think I know 4 people young, healthy people having diseases that were pretty unknown. Sudden, healthy people with no heart problems, suddenly dying overnight. Strange. And I hear this more often of other people who are having brain issues. The doctor can't find anything. And I said to them, maybe it's the vaccine. No, the vaccine is impossible. I say, do you know how this vaccine works? No, it's approved by the doctor. Do you know how much money is earned in the short term? Do you know what this really was? It was a test to look how gehoorzaam, how in German.
Say it in German.
Say it in German. I don't know it as well. Good glauben.
Like a blind trust or
Blind trust. It was a test in how much of a portion of the population will follow blindly the government, whatever they say.
Yeah.
And this was a test about. It was a global test just to see what we can do. How far can we push the stupid masses?
Yeah. How far we can push, because I think there was more than that. I think there was not just how much they believe, because there was a lot of things that were done to make sure that people got injected, right? All these lockdowns, also these rules and passcodes that you couldn't enter anywhere, and then mass media, the shows that were saying how unvaccinated should be not treated at hospitals, or they're second-class citizens, they should not be allowed at bars, or horrible things. Or I think there were people who even were saying, and I think Simon Godek does an amazing job pulling up all these tweets of people who were saying they should be killed, or if they die, we will not worry, stuff, horrible things like that. And so it was about resistance as well. So they learned that not only we just blindly believe, but under certain circumstances that we will, even if we believe it's dangerous, we will do it because we are worried about what other people are going to think. Because I know people who didn't want to do it, but they were under pressure from their families and they did it. So I think it's like this, I think the book was the 1984, Orwell.
Yeah, of course.
The couple, they, in the beginning, I think it's that book, they were like, no, we're going to fight for it, we are against it. And at the end, not only they came out of the jail say coming down, but they started loving the government, loving this. So it's, if you put enough pressure, you could completely change people. So I think that was also.
But these are the people that are not a large majority. I don't know the percentage. More than 90% of the people will, probably more than 98% of the people will blindly follow what the government says. It was a test. So all these expressions of masks and QR codes and lockdowns, it was all part of the test. How can we control the population up to what point? This was
how much can you push?
Yeah. How much can you push the population? And it seems as an random, and we will stop right now. It seems like a random sequence of events. So there was a lab in Wuhan, and this virus was leaked. We all know this, and the American government also invested money in this laboratory. You know this as well. So it seemed like an orchestrated event. Okay, we're now going to leak this virus. It will look what it does, because it was obviously an artificial virus. Because a natural virus evolves into a less harmful. Because when a virus is very harmful, it will kill its host and it cannot replicate. So it makes the host sick a bit, but not sick enough not to copy itself to other hosts. This is the natural evolution of a virus. But this virus is obviously pretty harmful. But it evolved very, very fast into a less harmful version.
Yeah.